All right. Hello and good morning to the Coaches Corner, brought to you by the Endurance Lab, where we, the coaches, join up and live as we recap the week and answer your questions. Barely awake this morning. My name is Jason Flores, one of your Endurance Lab coaches, and today I'm joined by Taya Friedstead, Mitch Stangerman, and our nutritional therapist, Andrea Cullen. Good morning, everybody.
Hey, good
Good
morning.
morning.
Good morning.
Just a quick reminder to all our viewers and listeners, we do record this live on several different platforms, so this gives you a chance to be part of the show by asking your questions. So jump on live and be part of the show. We got a really interesting topic today. We've been going back and forth between the coaches this week with a lot of things going on with rides going back to back, and people talking just really about fueling and trying to put together an idea of what they should be doing, whether they're doing back-to-back rides or just regular training throughout the week. Just a couple questions that we feel like we can kind of help talk about and kind of solidify and hopefully give you an idea of what we're thinking and maybe prompt some questions from you guys. I guess let's start at the beginning. We could talk about just kind of generally before the ride, kind of what kind of things we do and what kind of things that we would recommend people think about during that time. So, yeah, what do you like to do before your rides?
So we're having this conversation, and the thing is, a lot of people like me work out very early in the morning.
Absolutely.
And what are you gonna get before a very early morning workout? And even if you eat something very quickly, is it even going to be
Mm-hmm.
fast enough? Is your body going to absorb it fast enough so that you can benefit from what you just ate in that workout? So the example is you wake up at 4:30 in the morning and you're on the bike at 5
Yep.
on your trainer. And so then my tendency was to think, okay, let's get something that's fast. So a banana with maple syrup is one example. And so I'll throw this one out there. So we can start with that. The other thing I do sometimes is my mix with protein powder, the banana, a little bit of oats, and almond butter. That is I have a video posted on the Endurance Lab YouTube page of that one. But that one, I even feel like it's a little bit heavy if I'm going to jump on the bike in 30 minutes.
It is.
So yeah, so I think that maybe going to the banana with maple syrup and maybe I'll eat one hard-boiled egg is what I would do right before.
I like that. I think adding some protein to that is useful. I think fueling for the length of the workout is important too. You're looking at something 60 minutes or longer. Something that's going to take a little longer to digest. What are you guys' thoughts on kind of what the fuels we're looking at, or kind of if we break them down, we're looking at something that will absorb more quickly and a little bit more slowly. And then with that, adding a couple things like a protein, and I don't even think we should even delve into looking to add fats unless you're going 3 hours plus. But let's keep this conversation to 90 minutes plus and around 60 minutes, because a lot of our Endurance Lab workouts are around 60 minutes. And our longer rides are going to be 90 plus. So with that.
So before a 60 to 90 minute workout. Okay.
Well, can we dial back one second? Because I think I started this whole thing with a question about fueling for, some things that we're doing right now. But so part of my confusion comes from, everything I've learned or read in the last, number of years is 60-minute workout to 90-minute workout. I've got enough glycogen stores in my liver. My body's kind of primed, it can handle that. But what I'm learning and what I'm reading is that, yes, that's so, but you should still kind of pre-fuel. And that's where I don't really understand the science and the kind of current thinking around, if I've got enough glycogen and energy stores in my body, what do I need to eat before and then during that 60 to 90-minute workout?
Yeah. And I think it just has, go ahead, Andrea, go ahead.
I suppose regarding the glycogen stores, it depends on if we're looking at an athlete who's training multiple times a day as well. Because if you're a triathlete or a cyclist who's doing a lot of hours, you could have done a session the evening before and perhaps not replenished muscle glycogen stores adequately, it's not that easy for the body to start mobilizing glycogen stores from other compartments in the body into where you need also. And I think, I suppose there's so many things to think about. I mean, I'm looking at a screen and I've Jason, Mitch, and Thea in front of me, and you're all different. You all have different goals. Mitch, you're striving for lean muscle maintenance and a bit of weight loss, correct?
Yep.
Thea is just wants to kill everyone in her races and be really strong and continue the way she's going. And for Jason, your metabolism is something that you're always trying to hold on to your lean muscle and protect those gains, correct?
Yep.
So you're even taking that into context. Then no training session is really a fuel in isolation. We have a lot of fat on our body. So yes, you're correct. We don't really need to be taking on a load of fat before the session, but what we want to do is enable the body to use some of the fat that it has there to fuel the sessions that are at slightly lower intensity. So fat becomes less of a consideration if we're racing at, or it's high intensity, you know, hard work for a long time. And if it's not hard work for a long time, then we do want to sort of help the body get better at mobilizing those fat stores. So a lot of straight fast sugars is going to impede or blunt or completely stop that fat oxidation. So I feel for most sessions, even if time is significant, if we don't have that much time, it is actually easy enough to get some carbs into us when we're on the bike. So just starting off with something, even if it's a little bit of protein and a little bit of a slower releasing carb, we're getting some fuel in that we can then sort of tweak. You know, just say you're on the bike and you're like, God, I don't feel like any of that banana is getting in. You can take a drink of it, you know, a swig of an energy drink once you're moving on the bike. And if it's a longer session, there is things available to us if we have food close by to kind of top up what we need. But I really do believe in slightly slower releasing carbs as the prime base with a bit of protein. And then if you want to add in a little bit of something to give it a kick. So it could be oats with a bit of maple syrup or rice with a bit of maple syrup and an egg. So you're getting a little bit of those sugars just to kind of get the body going, not too much, because remember, our stomach is sort of a mixing machine. When we add fiber, fat, or protein to some carbohydrates, it's automatically going to slow down the release of carbs into the system, creating a nice slow release.
Yeah.
But I do feel that also just putting food in the system tells the body it's okay to go. It's okay to, you know, throw something in now, muscles. You know, there's more on the way. So we're going to release those, you know, reserves. So just say you didn't really eat that well the night before and reserves are a little low. If you try and do that session fasted, you're not going to, or not on enough fuel, you're not really going to hit any numbers. But if you take a little bit of fuel in, and it does tell the body more is on the way. Is that making sense?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be an advocate of a lot of straight sugars unless it's a race and you really want to, you know, go all out at high intensity and have that available to the body. I do feel that a more natural mix of the lower glycemic index carbs with maybe a bit of protein and little natural fats from your nuts or seeds. When you were talking about that mix that you make, Thea, did that mentally feel heavy or physically on the stomach? Because it is a nice mix. You've got a mix of things going on there.
No, it mentally, just physically feels great. I love that. You know, it's, in fact, early in the morning is probably one of the only things I can eat. I cannot wake up and just eat something solid right away.
Yeah. I think a lot of it just has to do with the way we train and the way we prepare for different things. You need to understand that you need to turn different systems on. And so you get trained, because a lot of times, you know, waking up and not eating is pretty natural. Depending on your goals, you may not eat, you know, till lunchtime. But if you're trying to fuel, let's say, back-to-back efforts, you know, within 24 hours, these are the considerations that we need to make. If you're training every other day, let's say, you've got to work, you know, you work on, let's say, Monday, you're off Tuesday, you work Wednesday, then in those times, very little fueling could make it. Just fueling that small amount, something slow, like Andrea was saying. But for a lot of the guys, for example, right now, we've got a challenge where everybody's riding every single day at a very high intensity. You need to make sure that you're fueling appropriately before and after these workouts. But that's the key, before and after these workouts. The rest of the day should be a very balanced, you're looking at vegetables, you're looking at proteins. What I explained to one of our athletes is that if you're looking at your carbohydrate input during these times, think of them as very high, let's say a 4-to-1, something to that ratio during and around your workout, and then flipping that the rest of the day where you're getting oppositely, and then the body's getting its proteins, its vegetables, and those nutrients all through whole foods if possible. It's totally possible. I went through kind of a cycle through fueling straight off the bike with, simple stuff like dextrose and like protein powders, and just seeing how I felt with that versus whole foods, because the whole house here is pretty dark still, even after I finish my workout. It's tough to like go up and like, yesterday was sweet potatoes and eggs and right after the workout. And it's tough to like get everything up and going because it's kind of loud. So then I was trying to think of what about those riders? And it wasn't that it was hard. I think it worked, but I was still hungry, even though the numbers matched. Does that make sense?
So, I mean, that was the discussion we had, though, was, the dealing with, I think, the feelings of hunger versus, having the nutrients, right? So I'm in your kind of boat, but it's just because I don't want to say I'm lazy. But I mean, it's really easy to like last night I got done at, what time did I get done? 10 o'clock p.m. last night. Yeah. And I knew I needed something because I just spent almost 2 hours in a real intense workout. So I had a really high quality kind of protein and carbohydrate recovery drink. And I was actually surprised and it was a busy weekend. I was surprised within a half hour I was ready to fall asleep. But I woke up really hungry this morning. Yeah. And I haven't done anything about it yet, except for a cup of coffee.
Oh no, that's not.
But you don't have a workout. But also, Mitch does have a workout at lunch though.
At lunchtime, yeah. So I'll have something good here in a few minutes.
Yeah.
It's really difficult because everyone has a lot of stress in their lives, and what you don't want to be doing is letting your training become too much of a stress on top of the body, where then you're just not getting the full gains of the training, or you're getting sick, run down, or injured. So it's tough. Like, I'm working with an ultra athlete at the moment, and he does so much training and so much work, and it's trying to give suggestions with food that are going to be so simple. So I think if you're having rice for dinner, cook more. Use that as your breakfast. Making those egg muffins any day you have a bit of time, cooking up a batch of sort of healthy energy bars, which is basically breakfast in a bar, where you have your protein, your nuts, your seeds, your fruit, your oats, your maple syrup, and freezing them in individual portions. So it's sort of putting in a little bit of work to make life easier later on, so that you're getting the gain of all your hard training, and trying to get yourself out of the mindset that training is the punishment and food is the reward. Because I think we tend to punish, like, oh, I did a great session, I didn't eat, I starved myself for a bit, and you think, go me. And then you're eating loads in the evening because your cortisol is all messed up and you feel you deserve it because you work so hard. It's just a negative cycle. But we like to think we've worked hard, so that every training session, because it feels strange when you fuel a training session well, you feel really good the whole way, and it's like, oh, maybe I didn't work hard enough, but you were. It's just you were recovering while you were training, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I was going to say something.
Along those lines, right? So I feel that if I have enough carbs on board to do an intensity workout, it feels amazing.
Yeah, totally.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's incredible. But then I have a hard time figuring out, is this too much? Yeah. Because I almost think that, if I have a little table, okay, that I follow. So it's X grams of carbs per kilogram if it's a 1 hour workout. So let's say in my case, if it's an intensity workout, 30 grams of carbs, right? Before a 1 hour, an hour and a half hard workout. But in all honesty, I feel like I need more than that. And if I eat more than that, and maybe it's psychological, but if I eat more than that, I have a great session. Yeah. And if I eat the carbs the night before, I have an amazing session. Yep. So maybe my problem is, and I don't do what Jason said, which is concentrate all around the workout time and then focus more on proteins and vegetables and fruits the rest of the day. I sort of like carry that carb with me in all the meals.
Yeah. It's hard because I guess maybe Andrea could speak a little bit to it, but when we're kind of outside the 2 or 3 hours of our workout, essentially But you know what? You're not eating, processed carbohydrate. These are just normal things. If we were off the bike, you'd still have those meals probably, Taya. You know what I'm saying? Like it's stuff that does have proteins, fat, and carbs on the meals, and but you're getting a higher load during these harder sessions. You know what I mean? And so shooting for that number, and I've been pushing my number up to 30. I started at 30, and getting the closer I get to 60 during that hour or that 90 minutes is useful. And I think it feels stronger, and so that you know that you can go to this when you need to fuel, because you again need to practice that as well. But I guess the talk is, do we carry that throughout the day, and try to get like fruits in. What else did we tell Mitch to bring to his weekend adventures? He was telling eat fruits, no, he wasn't bringing vegetables. Potatoes, yeah, things like that. But these are
I
all
had a potato this weekend.
there you go.
And
See?
potatoes aren't actually that high in carbs. So if the rest of the day you're focusing on root veggies mostly, they're pretty low in carbohydrate compared to your more denser grains and fruits. So you shouldn't feel guilty for having a bit of a potato or a sweet potato or some parsnip or butternut squash or carrots, because they're giving you loads of minerals and electrolytes too. So I think the denser stuff around the session and your balance, because some of us just miss the idea of a carb on a plate. So then make a better choice with the carb on a plate. Whereas others don't need it. They'll be all concentrated around training sessions and less later on.
Yeah.
Unless, it can be helpful to have a bit of carbs in your dinner if you have an early morning training session when you're not going to be that hungry, because it sort of will carry over a bit. So it's playing around with little things. And I think if your weight's going up consistently, something's not right. And if it's dropping too much or recovery's poor, something's not right. And getting your body compositions done and just weighing yourself, I think once a week is adequate. Just as, you could do every day to look at how your week is going regarding hydration and recovery. But what you don't want to do is get just stuck on numbers. But, signs, our physical size, how our clothes are, we do sort of get an idea at the same time how we're getting on with things.
Yeah. So I guess it goes back to, how often we're training. Andrea mentioned, fueling the night before. But if you're fueling every night before and you're putting 60 grams, per hour in, and then you're fueling after, and then you're fueling at lunch, and then it's dinner again, you're fueling like it's a race, like
a world tour. Like it's a multi-stage race.
But there's a time for that. Like for example, like I said, Mitch and I are doing something that's very intense. It's every day. It's within 24 hours. So this is the time to train for that sort of thing. If we were on our normal training sessions, we do 3 key workouts, which is a lot of what our endurance lab recommends. There's days in between for recovery, for stretching, mobility. I think during those times, we need to be very thoughtful on your normal training. So if you're on a let's say a 3-day stage race, you're at a team camp. There's a lot of groups that'll be going to team camps here in the first quarter. You need to be able to know what you need to do in order to ride and feel good every single day, instead of feeling like you're getting thrown under the bus every single day, and just barely getting up. I think it's important. And so, I think I just wanted to add that.
And from a coach's perspective, right? If you have a very hard workout and you are not driving yourself to the ground in terms of training super hard and overtraining, if you're balancing your training properly, you have your fuel, also an adequate fuel. When you get on the bike to do a hard workout, it feels hard, but it's not so hard that your legs are just absolutely killing you and you feel such heaviness in your legs. And it's hard, you're working hard, but you feel like you have the energy for it. So I think that's a good way to think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
another, sorry, Jason.
No, go ahead. I have a question.
Another thing that people can tend to do is it might not actually be about the carbohydrates. So you could be getting your carbs before and during and after training, wherever is more important for that session, correct? But later in the day, dropping to more veg and protein. But what you could be doing is adding way too much fat, which we've kind of been told now, oh, fat's fine. You can have loads of fat. It will help everything. But fat is really calorie dense. So that could be pushing your calories in too much. So just be mindful that it's just the small portions of those healthy fats that are going to be fine for us. Generally, most of us have plenty of fat on our bodies.
Yeah, we definitely hear that. Call that is it like driving a semi truck? You've got gas in the truck and you've got all the fuel in the back, and you could just access all the fat, that would make the difference, I guess. There's a question here on the live stream. I'm trying to see if I could phrase it in a way that won't take the rest of the podcast, but it's talking about riders, maybe options for riders who are gluten-free. Let's say that, because the question exactly was, what about gluten-free for 15-year-old high-level athletes? And I think I hopefully speak for us, that unless you're really sensitive to it, to not really, I guess, have to worry too much about it. But maybe we could talk about some choices that would be gluten-free friendly.
And real quick, right? There's a really specific test for gluten-free.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but without getting into it, making sure that you really are gluten sensitive. But then, what are some ideas?
Oh, those tests aren't always accurate.
Yeah, there's that too.
They're looking at, that's a whole debate. You know, looking at gliadins and zonulin and different things in the gut. Now, I eat gluten-free, and it's no different. Like, our house is pretty gluten-free because I'm gluten-free. There's gluten-free oats. You've got rice. You've polenta. You've root vegetables. You've banana. You've your fruits. So you can do it with natural foods. Without a lot of gluten-free foods are highly, highly processed. The only time you really would need to pay a little bit of attention is if you're buying fueling products for your racing, just to make sure that the health bars are mostly natural, but based on gluten-free grains. And also within that, the gluten-free ones aren't mostly fat, so that there still is, your gluten-free oats, your quinoa, your teff, your buckwheat, millet. There's loads of options. So it doesn't need to be a processed gluten-free diet. It can be a wholesome and natural one. And just making little substitutions, like if you use soy sauce, gluten-free soy sauce. There's lots of resources available online, and I have a heap of them if they did want to talk to me directly. But go for the natural foods, and you should be fine.
Yeah, I think those are really good options there. I was gonna say, I guess, speaking to the liquid side of things, if we were to do kind of more processed, because I guess it is, but more powdered version, like I talked about kind of my homemade post-workout, which is essentially dextrose and like protein powder at a number that it works for me, like a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 ratio. Mitch, you're a pre, post, and during powder workout guy that seems to work pretty well.
No pre. For a race, it's usually like gels.
Then
in race, if I can, depending on the length, it's mix or gels or both. And then post, I have a product that I use that at least I bought into the science behind it, and it seems to work well for me.
Yeah. So let's talk about during.
Let's talk about during.
Yeah, let's go with during then. During a workout.
So
again, it depends on the workout and the length, right?
Yep. Again. Andrea?
Yeah, you want to. I did this recently. I went through almost every product that would be commonly used here. I'll put the article up for us on the forum once I finished it, because my eyes were sort of opened. A lot of the gels and drinks aren't made from multiple transportable carbohydrate options. High Five was one of them. No fructose in the mix. So generally, you're looking at a glucose dextrose maltodextrin with fructose. And that's important if you're trying to aim for higher carbohydrate oxidation rates. So anything where your kind of race intensity or duration is asking for more than 60 grams carbs per hour, you want to have a dual fuel source, so that you're optimizing your ability to absorb carbohydrates above the way the stomach limits things. Below the 60 grams per hour, or for general training, we don't need to be hitting those high rates, so it matters less. If we're doing, there are some interesting products that will help support a slower rate of glucose release, that will help you sort of stay in a little bit of a fat oxidation zone while providing you with a sustained release of fuel. And there are some good companies doing, like, I suppose Generation You Can would be a slow release form. Ethic Sport in Italy have some amazing gels, and they have a patented slow release dextrin with different releases. Your Hammers Perpetuums as well would be quite interesting, but not a dual fuel. So it's looking at, what do I need? Do I need loads of energy with high calories for a long time, or do I just need fast calories for a shorter amount of time, or is it a lot of fast calories. It's sort of looking at, what's the distance, what's your duration, what's your intensity. Do I need to have a really specialist product? And then we've interesting products like Morten, which is the hydrocarbon, the polymer, which is meant to optimize your absorption rate too. So I suppose it's thinking about, am I just normal, and will I get something, from something normal? Is that enough, or do I need to go more specialist and spend more money? Because these things cost money.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think at home we should have, like, I have a box and I have my race stuff or for big training stuff. And I don't go into that unless I need it, because it's expensive to have those products. And then for other things, I'll just, your maple syrups, your honey, your fruit, your dates, your bananas, those sort of nougats and those sort of things are going to work. So I think it's being sensible and not just buying into all the marketing and thinking about, well, what's actually going on here in this training session or this race.
So the hour and a half hard training session, do I need anything during?
I would listen to your body, but I would say possibly as you're hitting that hour mark, you need to be conscious of getting what you need in slightly ahead of the point of, oh no, I missed my opportunity. Yeah. But I would say as you go between 60 and 90, unless you've had a mega breakfast, more than likely, even just to tell your brain, I've got a bit more sugar on board. So it may not need to be a lot, but something, and then just playing around with that. And for women, of course, we have our fantastic hormones to mean that we're kind of trying to gauge things for 2 halves of a month.
Yes. Yeah. And now I want to pull that point that you brought up also, Andrea, that you just made, which is something that's to tell your brain that you have something on board.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of people don't know that, just having something in your mouth can signal the brain that it's okay, you have what you need, there's some carbs, so you're okay to use it. And that in and on itself can help get you through the workout. So in my experience, for the very hard workouts, I usually have something 40 to 45 minutes in if it's an hour and a half.
I like that. I thought Taya was gonna bring in the new bucket that they have at the in their training room where they just swish and spit.
Wine.
What do you mean? No bucket, just
spit on the floor. Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh! It's all sugary drinks on the floor between you and Drew.
Then have the dog come over and clean up. Okay.
Yeah. Dogs all feel. So yeah. So what we're talking about there is around the 45 to 60 minute mark. If you're going 90 minutes, definitely get something in before that. Have an idea, and don't forget splitting this with your hydration. We're talking about fueling, food side. Don't forget, we could also have carbohydrates and foods in your drink. So you want to split that between your drink and trying to get you optimized, most efficiently hydrated, as well as food. So maybe we could switch the conversation to getting that hydration in, and is plain water, anything from plain water to something completely, dialed in, like things that like we talk about Scratch, we talk about stuff that comes from other sources, or we can go to a completely, maltodextrin, drink that a lot of like Taya and I know Mitch do, like on their gravel rides, like something that heavy that would even replace the solid foods that we might be eating on the bike. So there's a whole varying gamut of hydration, but this is the things, considerations that you should be having during your ride on if where you want to get these carbohydrate sources, because those count too. Let's say we've got a bottle of Scratch, you're looking at a 16 to 20 ounce bottle, you're looking at 30 grams a bottle at optimized hydration in one bottle. So really you're only looking at another 20 or 30 grams if you're going an hour, 90 minutes on the other side. So a whole food, let's say, could do it, or
Swedish fish.
Swedish fish would do it. Haribo gummies would do it, I guess. You could stuff it in your mouth. What do we do here? We do
spit.
And then
the opposition.
Or like
Sorry.
No,
I
like
do that with my lunch too.
There you go. A Larabar of sorts, something kind of slower. I think that could get you through and get you the food that you need to get through, or a gel, like in a lot of people who do well, it's just a single gel, not every 20 minutes gel. But I mean, some combination will get you towards that 60 number very quickly if you're doing 60 to 90 minutes. And you'll get your hydration in. Versus that, you'll get your electrolytes hopefully there. You'll get some carbohydrates to help the transport of water in, and then you'll get water. And then the rest of the day, you should be drinking water. You don't drink your hydration drink all day. Please don't drink your hydration drink all day. So, yeah, I guess talking about that during.
So flip side, and we've been talking mainly about cycling, but
Yeah.
I love Andrea's thoughts here. So when you're doing, like, say, it's like a pure running event, it's one thing I've never really had issues with it, but it's kind of an interesting question is between hydration and fueling on like a half marathon or a marathon, right? I've always used gels, and I know that I'm really shortchanging myself on the water just because there's really not, I'm not carrying hydration with me, and you're running through an aid station, you're grabbing a small cup, and you're really just kind of satiating that feeling. Does it really matter for 90 minutes or 2 hours in a race situation?
Yeah.
As long as,
Yeah, I think a half marathon, I mean, the gels that are more liquid are going to help us somewhat with hydration. I think if we start hydrating with some electrolytes the night before and the morning of, we're going to be better hydrated. And if the conditions are ambient to what we're used to, we're not going to have sweat rates or electrolyte loss rates greater than what we're used to. So yeah, most of us would be taking those gels on. Now, marathon strategy, especially in harsh conditions, we're going to have to be a bit more mindful to get those fluids in that we need. But yeah, like I'm a big believer that we need to sit down before the event and work out what we're going to drink, what we're going to eat, and what is that giving us. Like, a lot of us lose our intuitive capacity to feel what the body needs when we're racing, because we're just doing so many other things, and a lot of people really undereat. So like, I'll sit down and I'll work out. I like having options, and I'll work out, well, what are my dates giving me? What are my chunks of my bar giving me? What is I'll have an electrolyte drink and a carb drink on the bike, and I'll look at the different scenarios and how I'll match I'll generally be okay on 60 grams carbs per hour, but I'll look at what it takes. So at least I know during that event, I need to hit this, whatever options I'm using. So I think it's really important to do that. And after the race, what did I do? And like, when I'm working with people at first, and we'll break down what they did in the race, they're not even hitting 40 grams per hour sometimes, or else they're way overdoing it. So I think it takes a bit of thought, but you need to sit down and work through what the options are giving you, and to practice in training as well, to keep the wrappers and look at what your real food and your products was actually giving you over the hour. If 3 hour rides would be perfect, for example. So you're looking at what you actually did and how did I feel, and then thinking about what's the target for your race and how much more you need to up that. And it also gives you an idea of whether you're a carb guzzler or you're sort of fat adapted, because if you're feeling really great on less carbs, like the 40-50 gram mark, you may not need to hit the 90 gram mark per hour for your Ironman. And unless you're pro, then pros are different. They need to be hitting the optimal of what science is telling us. But for us mere mortals, it's getting to know our needs. Excuse me.
Yeah, I think
so. Yeah.
So I think it's something that needs kind of the take-home messages here is something that we need to train, something you need to be thoughtful of before your training or racing session, and then something you need to try to execute. The same way we do our training to get a good outcome on the day of, you need to make sure that you plan for success as far as fueling, and not just put stuff in the pocket and eat it when you're hungry. Have some idea of what can work, and then so that you can go back and say, the minute you go back, you load your Strava, you look at your power data. The same way you would do that, you pull out your wrappers, say, how did I feel today? Did I feel strong? Did I feel like I was well fueled, or am I super hungry? Really, a lot of times people come off the ride and they're just so starving and just famished, right? But in fact, if we were fueling properly, you should be like, I'm good. You're putting stuff in, you're waiting for your stomach and your everything to just turn on your natural cues. Because if you were in fact fueling, your body would, continue that wanting to burn the fire at that point. So being conscious and understanding that, I think, is important. I think rounding.
Follow-up question.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Could overdoing be negative? So in other words, if you do too much of something, carbs or whatever, can that then do the opposite and hinder performance?
Well, I think too much carbs during, if you're trying to promote a little bit of fat oxidation. You don't want to be overcarbing on all of your sessions, but then overcarbing on your sessions and coming home and having a great big dinner and lunch, and you're looking at weight gain. But I think the overcarbing is more of an issue when people tend to go towards the products.
Yeah.
Because they don't really trigger that same satiety. Like, it's really easy to eat loads of sweet stuff and not feel full, and then feeling hungry when you get back because you need the protein and you need all the other stuff. But then you sit down and you have a cake because you just did a big cycle. But for certain sessions, I do believe you should be slightly on the undercarbed. For if you're looking for those, like the long, slow, steady, just to come home comfortable but a little bit hungry, and have more slow release carbohydrate, real food type things like your potato and your rice is going to be better, is going to help support the aerobic and fat oxidation adaptions that you're looking for. So I suppose it's putting thought into, well, what's this session actually trying to do and how can I help that? Like with your strength session on the bike, you want to have that little bit of protein or protein containing leucine available to help promote muscle metabolic changes and stuff like that. So you got to think a bit for yourself, I suppose.
Yeah, so we did at the beginning of this talk a little bit about what we do post workout. We could chat a little bit about about that. But in the interim, there was a couple comments from Linda in our live stream about, especially during the season when it's much cooler out, be careful of freezing water bottles and also frozen gels. So watching out for those. Linda's crazy. She rides outside when it's very cold. And I did the very California thing yesterday, and it was raining at my house and for the last couple of days. So I drove to where the snow was, and we hung out in the snow yesterday. And I was so sympathetic to how everyone else here is very cold, and it was very cold, and I came home after that.
Cold is really interesting, actually, regarding dehydration.
Yeah.
Because if it's a really cold, dry, we're cold and we don't really want to drink.
Yeah.
But when I was working with rugby players, we used to monitor their pre and post game weights. And on the really cold, dry evenings, they would dehydrate a lot more because they were losing. You can see it. You're breathing out, and you can see the moisture that you're losing. But also, you're less likely to drink because you're cold. Whereas in the humidity, we're less likely to lose. So we need to keep drinking when we're outside in the cold as well.
Yeah, and definitely consideration. And we can definitely post a link. I've got a great in the feed zone from a while back about fueling and getting ready for your workouts outdoors in the cold. So we can definitely post a link on that. So post-workout considerations, Whole Foods we're all fans of course. We talked about more prepared powders and things like that, and to be careful about making sure it has what you actually need, because it can leave you hungry even after the post-workout meal. I feel like the actual motion of chewing, and I'm sure Andrea will nod her head, like you're actually putting real food in where you're feeling like you're eating it, you're digesting it. It's and the body is going through that motion. If you're in a jam, obviously use the powders and things like that, and then put your next meal as your more whole food meal. But if you have an option for whole foods, it's definitely going to be the way to go, and you'll find yourself on the better side of how you feel for the rest of the day, versus continuing trying to fuel yourself after that.
Actually, one thing we didn't touch on is swimming. And Thea and Mitch have swimmers that do a lot of swimming. And it's hours, especially for young growing bodies. And a lot of people rock up to the pool in the morning and actually are doing a 1 to 2 hour training session without having eaten anything. And especially if it's growing bodies, it's really important to get some food in. But it can be difficult because you're going straight from food to this position where you're nearly spitting it out. So it's learning how to manage that as well. If you've long sessions in the morning, you do need to get in a little bit of something, and probably a more condensed form, so that you're getting the energy that you need.
And also hydration. I find that it's so hard to get them to hydrate properly. You know, my son will go to a 2.5 hour session and he doesn't bring a water bottle. And because they're in the water, they're not seeing their sweat.
Yeah.
And so in their minds, there's not that correlation of I'm sweating, I'm hot, I need to drink something.
Well, the other thing too is like, so we were at a meet over the weekend, and we were like, Ella, you need to drink something when you're not swimming. You're there for like 5 hours. She doesn't want to have to go to the bathroom. I mean, I have my answer, which I will tell you guys. But,
No.
But yeah, it's hard, especially with like my daughter's a really super picky eater, and it's like I don't know where she gets her fuel. She is because she's doing well, but it's a really tough question. I mean, and when I'm
and if they get
swimming
nervous
too,
they get nervous and they don't want to eat before.
in swimming, I think swimming makes you hungrier than anything because I think there's
Yeah.
something to do with the temperature of the water and the
Yep.
body compensating
Yep.
for that low
Right.
temperature to keep yourself warm.
Yeah.
I would suggest salt in their fluids because they're not gonna need to pee as much, and maybe even salty high energy snacks. So it may be that salted nuts aren't
Goldfish.
but they're gonna just to get something in. So you are kind of working around emotions, nerves.
Yeah.
You feel that hungry, don't want to feel full in a swimsuit. So it's just trying to find ways, packing everything into a really concentrated sports drink, homemade one.
Here's a question both of those examples were kind of more on race days, on the swim meet days. What about practice days? Are you guys also struggling to get hydration into your athletes during that time, or are they usually okay with practice and stuff like that?
The coaches make a point, at least for my son, the coaches make a point of, okay, guys, let's grab a drink.
Got it.
But it has to be that. Otherwise, they'll just go
won't.
through it without drinking
And
anything.
my daughter's swim sessions right now are like an hour 15. So, it's before and after. There actually is an interesting question. So Lindo's asking about
good
electrolytes, which I actually pay more attention to probably a lot of time than the carbohydrates, because I feel like for myself, it helps with recovery and just, I think, keeps like more of a balance. So I usually, if I'm not fueling, I'm having electrolytes at least. I'm interested in your guys' thoughts.
I think the electrolytes, if the session is inside and you're doing a lot of sweating and it's over an hour, are important because a lot of the electrolyte products aren't actually that strong.
Yeah.
Not even strong enough for when we're racing, but for training are going to be good. And then just a little bit of salt on your meals, good sea salt. But if we have a lot of stress in our lives, we're going to be losing more salt through the adrenals impacting electrolyte loss. So if we're really, really craving salty stuff, it's actually not that. We need to look at what are all the stress triggers. But drinking, the rest of the time, then just your herbal teas or your water, your cordials, and different things like that.
Yeah, I think playing around with a little bit of kind of the full strength, like precision hydration specifically, kind of they're more concentrated, and doing some math backwards to kind of make salt solutions. When you got up to the actual what I'm almost calling like prescription level electrohydrate level hydration levels, they're nothing close to what's in our drinks. Like you feel like you're having an electrolyte drink, it's mostly sweet. Electrolyte drinks on the proper level do not taste sweet. They taste very, very salty. If you are trying to replace that, in fact, trying to get that balance correct, depending on your sweat rate, for example, and that sort of thing. So definitely look into that, making sure you're getting the right electrolyte and the right amounts in during our workouts.
Yeah, a very popular product out there has just sugar.
Yeah.
The one that you buy everywhere off the shelf. I'm not going to say the name, but
yeah. So be careful. Read the ingredients.
Yeah.
Read the ingredients. So some really good questions, some really good thought about our foods that we should be having for our workouts, making sure we're getting the proper fueling in and the food in, and having considerations for real food today. So really great conversation from us and from everybody on the live stream today. If you joined us today and have more questions, go ahead and post some questions in the comments here, and we're more than happy to answer those. If you have access to the forum at discuss.endurancelab.fit, we're more than happy to have the conversation there as well. If it was your first time joining us, welcome. We did share this to a couple new platforms today. We do want to thank you for joining us today here in the Coaches Corner. And if you want to hear more content from us, the Endurance Lab coaches, head over to your favorite podcast app and search Endurance Lab, or head over to YouTube and do the same. But don't forget to click subscribe. For more information on our lab rides and our sessions, head over to endurancelab.fit, where you can learn and join us to train smart and get results. We'll see everybody next week on the next Coach's Corner.